What up and welcome to the Hype and Cowl Podcast, where we discuss what's been done, what's done right, and what's just hype in comic books and pop culture. In this issue, someone is Spawn, someone might be Mysterio, do the Tim Burton Batman movies take place within the DCEU, all that, plus a spoiler-filled Deadpool 2 review. I am your host, the irredeemable Ryan Hoffman, and those who know fear burn at the touch of my co-host, Cody Joe Toothpick. So without further ado...
Silly bitch, your weapons cannot harm me. Don't you know who the fuck I am? I'm the Juggernaut.
What up, everyone, and welcome to the Hype and Cowl Podcast, the only podcast where you, the listeners, decide the fate of us, your hosts. How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing good, man.
I've seen all your updates on Twitter. I fear for you. That is your Twitter, right?
Which Twitter?
No Mo Coco.
That's not me, man.
So yeah, Cody, I got some breaking news for you.
Yeah?
News so breaking that you'll swear it'll pick you up and break your back over its knee bane style. So Cody, have you heard the news that Jamie Foxx has been cast as Al Simmons in the new Spawn movie?
I have. Getting made by Blumhouse. The guys behind Get Out. So I'm hoping, it should maybe be good. I have faith in Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, if Jamie Foxx is in it, it's going to be good
Yeah,
somehow.
that's what I don't see him signing on unless it was, legit. The only other person, I thought would be good was Idris Elba, which I also thought he should have been Black Panther.
For most of those in the know, as in, the people that, keep tabs on this shit, the people that follow Todd McFarlane on Twitter, following him on other forms of social media, he's been talking about this movie for a hot minute. So long, you would never had imagined that it would ever get made, especially with Jamie Foxx. And I think Jamie Foxx is probably the best, not only the best person for the role, but also the best replacement for Michael Jai White.
Yeah.
I think they both have kind of the same sultry, dark chocolate, sexy gap tooth. I know for a fact that the people who have just recently been able to tell you the difference between a Marvel property and a DC property, they've known Spawn for decades.
I was saying they're still under the ownership of Image, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I was saying nowadays, even with Marvel and DC being as big as they are now, that's proof enough that he's had impact. Because if he didn't, and they were just oh yeah, we have this Spawn character that we're going to make, and he's not DC or Marvel. Well then, fuck, then you're just making up shit then.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get to that point eventually. We're going to have original superheroes that were purely written for the movie.
The people that don't remember Spawn have always heard of Spawn, but I wonder if the ones who haven't, the ones that are just truly oblivious to the character, I wonder if they're going to see the movie and they're going to think, well, this is a Venom ripoff,
Yeah,
or this is a Ghost Rider ripoff.
Yeah, I was saying it's Venom with a cape and a gun.
Probably the last bit of big Spawn news was when Marvel adapted a Spawn character into the Marvel Universe.
Who's that?
Angela. I believe she was some time-traveling half-angel, half-witch demon hunter of some sort, created by Neil Gaiman. And they had written her as the half-sister of Loki and Thor. I don't know how this acquisition came about. I don't even know how the deal went down, what spawned the thought. That's a pretty crazy situation, and because that happened within the last 10 years.
Who originally published Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the comics before everything, before the cartoons and everything? I'm asking because Warner Brothers, they own DC. And in the new Injustice game, you can play as the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So does DC...
No. Yeah, Nickelodeon owns the franchise at the moment. In the comic books, it's IDW. Or that might have at least been the larger publisher that they signed to after they had their independent roots.
Yeah.
When I first saw that DLC reveal of the Ninja Turtles, I'm like, this is fake as fuck.
Right, yeah. No, even even with Hellboy being an Injustice.
Well, the thing about Image and Dark Horse and Top Cow and Icon and shit is that they're all creator owned, so they can do whatever the fuck they want. So speaking of video games, I've really been having this deep sexual ache to play Jet Grind Radio.
Ooh.
A lot of people know this title as Jet Set Radio. I had Jet Grind Radio for Dreamcast. I had Jet Set Radio Future for Xbox.
Yeah.
And Obviously, we know that the original title for the Japanese game was Jet Set Radio, but they just switched out the set for Grind. You know, they're like, the word grind is going to sell this just to appeal to all the 11-year-old kids that were obsessed with grinding anything.
It worked.
Yeah.
You sure as shit know I got one on Christmas.
The game premise essentially is you have different gangs. There's these different gangs that exist in this made-up world of Tokyo-to, and they all have rollerblades, and they all have graffiti paint. They all just skate around the city, tagging, retagging. It's based around everyone listening to this radio station, this pirate radio station, that is essentially Jet Grind Radio, Jet Set Radio. Professor K was the guy's name, and he was in the majority of the cutscenes. He was in the introduction to the game. I just had a curious streak one evening, and I just, decided to look it up. And there's an official Jet Set Radio site. There's an actual, tuner where you can listen to the music that all the different gangs are listening to, and it actually is pretty relevant. There's a lot of music from the games, and then there's just a lot of music in general, where it's like what this individual would listen to, what this gang would listen to.
Have you ever seen The Warriors, late 70s?
Yeah.
Like, in that, there's all the different gangs in New York, and the Warriors are trying to get from Coney Island back to their side of New York, completely on the other side. All the gangs are looking out for them, but there's a lady on the radio monitoring, this whole turf war. She's on there, the Warriors are getting to this part of town, you better watch out for these guys and so much. And I think that's where, Jet Grind Radio got, their premise, because, the DJ tells the dudes, hey, this is happening around this place, and then he's on your next mission is around there, taking care of that kind of stuff. So I think that was influenced by it. Dreamcast in general, man, it's still the most underrated console ever. It had some of the greatest shit ever, and it was barely around for 2 years. PlayStation 2 came and destroyed it, and just left us with memories of what fun games were.
Dude, Power Stone was super ill too.
Power Stone was the shit.
Shenmue.
Shenmue, that's the one thing we have to remember by is the fact that we're getting Shenmue again, finally, after fucking 15 fucking years. It's been way too fucking long. First one came out 2000, second one came out 2001, which over here in America, we got the Xbox version. But yeah, now in Shenmue 3 is on its way for next year, hopefully. I mean, that's what they keep saying every year, oh, it's coming, then it gets pushed back to the next year.
They've been doing that with a lot of video games lately, I've noticed.
I mean, if it's not Shenmue, it's Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts 3, who we've been waiting on for 12 fucking years. It's supposed to come out this year, hopefully still, but, we'll see.
When does Spider-Man come out?
They keep saying
that was
summer.
That was another one. I can almost swear that game was supposed to be out by now.
Dude, 3 years ago, I remember them, talking about, the PS4 Spider-Man game, the one you've been waiting for. And then it's, coming soon. Then the next year, it's still coming soon. Then the next year, coming next year. And then come this year, they're still only saying summer. And it's almost summer. So I'm pretty sure it's going to get pushed back to the end of the year.
Yeah, well, fuck them. By the time that game comes out, the cinematic Iron Spider costume is going to be completely irrelevant, and no one's going to give a shit about it. We're all familiar with the most recent Godzilla movie, and we know that this Godzilla movie exists in this new kaiju universe, I guess you can say. You don't want to say the monster movie universe, because that'll make you think of the very short-lived Dark Universe by Universal. So, of course, Big Lizard stomps on shit, atomic breath. If you don't know, you know what? Matter of fact, fuck you. So Godzilla 2, it says here that it follows the heroic efforts of cryptozoological agency Monarch as its members face off against a battery of god-sized monsters, including Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and none other than King Ghidorah. Damn. So I guess they're throwing all of these motherfuckers in just all at once?
Yeah. They know what people want to see.
In other Godzilla news, Toho, the original Godzilla proprietor, they actually decided to scrap the sequel to their last film, Shin Godzilla, the really crazy-looking Godzilla that throughout the movie changes form. I think in the new American movie, there's obviously not a lot of Godzilla. It's all CG rendering where the majority, not the entirety, but the majority of the Shin Godzilla, the Japanese Godzilla movie, is a man in a costume.
Yeah.
So they did a lot more Godzilla. But yeah, they actually decided to backtrack on that, to scrap the sequel, which isn't a big deal because a lot of those movies kind of like take place within its own continuity. Like every time they reboot Godzilla, sometimes he's like a radioactive lizard, sometimes he's an alien, sometimes he's some force of nature. Essentially what America's doing right now with Godzilla, they have decided to do as well. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I remember watching Godzilla as a kid and seeing like King Ghidorah and Rodan, especially Mothra. Like, these are names that the majority of pop culture fans are familiar with. Speaking of giant CG renderings, Transformers 7 was officially pulled off the shelf.
I mean, do you know why?
If I were to guess why, I would say because it's about goddamn time. Literally, why the fuck else? I saw the one with Marky Mark, and just all those movies, they're the same movie over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I barely watch them. Speaking of Mark Wahlberg, he's actually rebooting Captain Kangaroo.
I don't know what this is.
It's like an old, it's actually the longest running children's show from 1955 to 1984. Captain Kangaroo, his father was a captain, and his mother was a kangaroo. Get through this motherfucking news. I know that you've heard that Jake Gyllenhaal is rumored to play Mysterio.
Yeah.
You really don't think anyone would make a good Mysterio.
I mean, the only thing you think of when you think of him is that fucking big old dome on his head, so it's hard to picture anybody.
What's a character that Jake Gyllenhaal would be better as?
Well, Spider-Man, I think he should be Kraven. Like, all he needs is a big, like, handlebar mustache and put a pelt on him. He's got those crazy eyes.
If Jake Gyllenhaal is cast as Mysterio, then that'll definitely take him out of the running for Batman, one would assume. And I don't even know how concrete that rumor was. Even when it was circulating, I was more for the idea of him playing Dick Grayson stepping into the mantle of Batman.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I wanted to touch on, especially on this show for a while now, is the possibility that the DCEU takes place within the Tim Burton / Joel Schumacher movie universe. So within that continuity of the original Batman movies. So yeah, we have the original Tim Burton movies, which consist of Batman 89, Batman Returns, played by Michael Keaton. Then the Joel Schumacher movies, George Clooney as well as Val Kilmer as Batman.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get real bad until Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
But looking back at them, I mean, you got to take them for what they were. To hate on those movies is to hate on the Adam West Batman.
I mean, yeah, they're definitely schlocky and corny. If they would have made it, like, dark and serious, people would have probably hated it.
Why do we think the DCEU, as in the Batman we know and love, sad Batman, why are we so convinced that this is within the same continuity as the original Batman movie?
Yeah, like, why are we?
I mean, we know that Batman and BVS. We know that that's a Batman that's been Batman for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trying to piece these two movies together, I mean, what do we have to bring up? The inconsistencies between the two, because that's what people are going to say. Well, they're two different people, especially when it comes to Alfred. You can throw that at me, but at the same time, in the original Batman tetralogy, like I said, within the continuity that we know exists, Harvey Dent was originally played by a black guy. Not even the fact that he was black and then he was white, but he was Billy D. Williams and then he was Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
And actually, Billy D. Williams came back to play Two-Face in the new Batman Lego movie. There are inconsistencies that I have caught within this theory. George Clooney at one point in Batman and Robin says this is why Superman works alone, considering that Superman doesn't even exist until decades later. But at the same time, like I said, the inconsistencies within the DCEU so far, I mean, it's enough to say that.
Fuck it, who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
like,
come on. So we're talking about Robin. Obviously, we know that Robin's introduced in Batman Forever. He wanted to be Robin. He wanted that superhero identity in Batman Forever. And then in Batman and Robin, he's wearing the Nightwing costume. It is not a stretch to believe that a year or so, a couple years immediately after that movie, who the fuck knows when, he becomes Nightwing. And then after the fact, Batman adopts a new Robin, who of course is Jason Todd. You know, we're all familiar with the theory that Jason Todd is the Joker. The Jared Leto Joker. If that's the case, if that's the way that we want to go, I've always taken it as the Joker killing Robin is more so the Joker mantle killing the Robin identity. That Jason Todd, he denounces the Bat family for whatever reason, and he decides to take on the Joker mantle. Because we know that even in the comic books, there's 3 separate Jokers. So it's not a stretch to believe that there are more than one Joker within this continuity. So we have Jack Nicholson Joker, and then we have Jared Leto Joker, who supposedly is Jason Todd. And you know what I also think makes that make a little more sense? The fact that when Jason Todd does come back, originally, who does he come back as?
Red Hood?
Yeah, exactly. The Joker's initial identity.
Yeah.
Coincidence? I don't fucking know. Not according to me in this podcast at this very moment. So, even talking about the Joker in between, because the Joker does die at the end of Batman 89.
Yeah.
And it's a very apparent death. It's not like he might have gotten away.
His body is destroyed.
So it's either Jason Todd taking on the identity of the Joker from legend. I know in the movie universe it's not as extensive as it is in the comic books, so it's really hard to say that Joker was his arch nemesis, but Joker in the Tim Burton movie was the killer of
his parents.
Yeah. And I really don't know what kind of look we get of the killer in BVS, because I know they have that opening sequence of his parents getting killed, which should be in the beginning of every movie, even if it's not a Batman movie. We have not even come close to seeing our fill of Martha and Thomas Wayne getting shot in an alley. I'm going to make that the home screen background on my phone, so every time I check my phone, I have to relive the tragedy that forged Batman.
I just want to see pearls dropping onto the rainy ground real slow.
Furthermore, every villain that's referenced in BVS or Justice League, all villains that have existed in not only previous Batman movies, but the original 4 movies.
Do they ever mention Harvey Dent or Two-Face or anything?
I'm not sure. You see the Riddler graffiti at Wayne Manor. Alfred mentions the Penguin in passing. But, I mean, it's a fun little theory. Yeah. It's a fun little theory. And this was a little theory that Cody and I came up with last night. We were discussing the absence of the Joker, whether or not there was a Joker that Jason Todd immediately modeled himself after, or maybe kind of mintied under. We were like, well, who in that original mythos, that original Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher mythos, is it anyone? We were looking for any fucking loose ties. We would have taken anything. We kind of stumbled onto the theory that Max Schreck from Batman Returns, one of the more heinous individuals in that movie, he pushes Selina Kyle out of a window. Just the fact that this character is played by Christopher Walken. Yeah. One of the people we've always wanted to see as the Joker. So essentially what we're saying is that Christopher Walken's character from Batman Returns becomes the next Joker. So this is a few years after the demise of the Joker in the first movie. He was already kind of climbing that ladder before he was even introduced to, like, super villainy.
Yeah, no, he was already a pretty shady guy.
He was an asshole. His dick smelled of the dying Great Barrier Reef. Max Schreck most definitely does die, but how he dies is very interesting to me, because it's a showdown between him and Catwoman, and immediately after, Batman reveals himself to be Bruce Wayne. And that's where you get that line, Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed like Batman?
Yeah.
Now, what unfolds in the scene is Selina Kyle, Catwoman, is approaching him. In Batman Returns, it's written that she has meta ability.
She got those 9 lives.
Yeah. So what she does is she takes down some electrical conduit, rips it off the ceiling, and then she takes her taser and she puts it between their faces as they make out, frying them both. If you wanted to reach, you could say that her ability to respawn also traveled through Max Schreck as the electricity was traveling through him.
Yeah.
It's a stretch, but if Max Schreck were to survive, were to come back, he's going to be even more deranged considering that he came back to life, because obviously Catwoman was pretty unhinged in this movie too. And not only that, but he also knows the identity of Batman. That version of Joker really could cause Batman a great deal of turmoil. But anyway, just considering the existence of a second Joker, considering the possibility that it could be Max Schreck, somebody that knows the identity of Batman, I mean, it would make more sense. And not to mention that they are making a Joker movie. That new Joker movie could take place anywhere. And we got the Batman score, too. That's what most people bring up.
Yeah, the little bit in the
when
Justice
I'm like,
League.
It takes place in the same continuity. They're like, oh yeah, because of the score that
Oh, Danny Elfman.
This isn't my theory, of course. You know, I've heard mention of it every now and then, but I haven't heard anyone elaborate on it, especially to this extent. But I'm pretty happy with the structure that we've built so far.
Yeah.
So you've seen Deadpool 2.
I have.
I've only seen it once.
I've seen it 3 times.
Okay, good. I think the fact that I've only seen it once kind of shows where I am on it. A lot of the acts are so surprising that you kind of don't even want to relive it. Now, even though, like, I kind of kept my ear to the ground, not once did I read or hear anything about the entirety of X-Force just dying immediately.
Yeah.
I feel like that itself is kind of like a meta way to poke at all the other studios for making these trailers and like re-editing stuff and things.
That and everybody just rushing into fucking super teams. Like, everything's got to be a team. You got Suicide Squad, Justice League. Like, why? You don't have to do it if it doesn't need to be done. Quit trying to force it.
So yeah, let's break Deadpool down. Well, let's not break it down. Let's casually take it apart.
Yeah.
Let's just piece by piece. Juggernaut. I was under the impression that Juggernaut was going to be in this movie.
Yeah,
I was under the impression that was kind of common knowledge, but I guess not as much as I thought so.
No.
And when that initial teaser when Deadpool's doing that,
the Bob Ross.
Yeah. I think it cuts to a montage of scenes, and then it cuts back to him.
Yeah, and
then he sees that red blob on the. I always saw that as the Juggernaut. I was like, that looks like the Juggernaut to me.
You did. Like, the minute you saw that, you're like, I can see the glimmer in his helmet, and I was like, I don't see what you're seeing, man. I just see a bunch of paint.
And the Juggernaut was definitely treated well in the movie. He did not say, "I'm the Juggernaut, bitch."
Thank God.
That probably surprised more people.
I did not expect him to be that fucking big, and thank God he was, though. Like, he looked straight up like badass.
What do you think has been done? What do you think was done right? And what do you think was just hype? What do you think's been done? So for me, what's been done was most definitely Cable's backstory. You know, his
Yeah, it's very yeah.
It's very like he lost his family and he's out for revenge. I was hoping that there was a little bit more to that than he wronged the wrong person and they wronged him back in a worse way.
Yeah. It didn't hinder the movie any. It's not like they didn't give us anything that we needed for him to make sense in the movie. The fact that he's a time traveler, that's enough for anybody.
Yeah, and that's another thing. And I think the reason why I disliked it as much as I did is because there was so much substance that they could have used in lieu of. They most definitely didn't go into too much detail in regards to what kind of future he comes from. And they didn't even really allude to the fact as to whether or not it was connected to the Days of Future Past timeline.
Yeah.
They kind of left it pretty ambiguous as to whether or not he was a mutant.
There's a scene where Deadpool has his gun and Cable just kind of like snatches it away from him. Not by like physically, like he just like it just flies out of Deadpool's hand.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if they're saying like his arm is like magnetic or they're hinting that he has telekinesis.
It's almost as if they're replacing all of his telekinetic abilities with abilities granted by the techno-organic virus.
Yeah.
Or by his bionic arm. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't really know the actual explanation for it. Because, like I said, they don't really go into whether or not it's telekinesis. They do mention the fact that his daughter's name is Hope. Now, in the comics, Hope is his adopted daughter. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of protects her because she is the first mutant born in decades after the events of M-Day. You know, we know Hope as Hope Summers. She was given that name because she was raised by Cable.
Yeah.
And we know that Cable is the son of...
So wait, like, so Cyclops, like, I knew, like, his mother is, like, a clone of Jean Grey. Cyclops is supposed to be, like, a clone, too?
No, Cyclops is most definitely his dad.
Okay.
And I do think that it is Madeline Pryor that is Cable's actual mother, blood mother. And they do have, like, a little Pryor's Treats Easter egg. In the movie. I think it's like an ice cream truck or something. The little that they gave us has not only been done so many times, but it's also the backstory of a lot of other characters that we're familiar with. Mm-hmm. We have a pretty good feeling that Hawkeye's character in the next Avengers movie is going to be driven by the death of his family. Mm-hmm. You have to identify with them and their brutality because of the extent of their loss.
Yeah.
It was their kid. It was their wife. And I just think that they could have added a little more to that. Now, to move on, what do you think was done right?
The humor for the most part.
No, I definitely feel like a lot more jokes landed in this movie.
Yeah. Okay, in the first one, the Rosie O'Donnell, Jose Canseco joke was so... First of all, it's not funny. Like, it's just not even that clever.
No.
And it's super out of date. Jose Canseco has not been a person of any kind of interest since, like, the early 90s. And Rosie O'Donnell, too. People stopped giving a shit about her before the 2000s.
Yeah, that was most definitely their attempt at, like, sporadic, random humor.
Yeah, which is fine, but when it's in a movie that comes out at a certain date, like, it's saying that's the thing, like, about references. Like, it's either got to be far enough away to where the nostalgia value of it helps it be more relatable, or it has to be current enough to be understood. And that was, like, right in the middle of who gives a shit and who the fuck are you talking about? Like, in the first one, I feel there's a couple jokes like that. But in this one, the only thing that really bothered me was the dubstep shit. It was just like it's like if they would have brought it up once.
All right. So, Cody, what do you think was done right in this movie?
I think this movie in all is just a step above
Yeah.
the first one. It definitely had a bigger budget, and I think that definitely helped. Like, it was more cinematic.
Yeah, and that's definitely within the parameters of what I think was done right. Because we all know that Tim Miller left the project, that there was a feud there was a conflict of creativity between Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller, the director. Ryan Reynolds had went on record to say that it was because Tim Miller wanted a bigger budget, more of a superhero movie. And then I've also read the contrary, where Tim Miller said, no, I wanted to keep it as raw and gritty as possible, and Ryan Reynolds wanted to make it more of a polished comic book movie. Now, we can tell by the final product that obviously someone who was still involved with the movie wanted it to be a bigger movie.
Yeah.
There was a lot of action that took a lot of work and that took a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's easy to believe that it was Ryan Reynolds that wanted to make it more of a Hollywood production almost.
Yeah.
Everything in this movie that's bigger than the last movie, whether it be action or graphics it definitely, I feel like it was handled right. It was done right.
Yeah, and like I understand where they say like, oh, we want to keep it raw, we want to keep it like what it's known for, and then saying like also like, oh, we need to make it more cinematic, more superhero. And I think they managed to hit it like right in the middle, because I think it has the rawness of the first one. Like, them being in the X Mansion and be like, there's no one ever fucking here. And then they're, like, standing behind them and they shut the door. Those people, like, they weren't even there. Like, those actors were filmed in a completely other fucking place. And they just added that shit in. But the fact that they had enough money to make that little bit of effort, I think helped a lot.
It surprised me, the lack of hand-to-hand combat, or the lack of exceptional hand-to-hand combat, considering that the director of John Wick was involved in this movie. And before we wrap things up, probably the most important portion of the segment is what was just hype in Deadpool 2. Obviously X-Force, for its own reason, for its own meta reason, X-Force was all hype.
Like, when they first started dying, like, once Zeitgeist went in, I was like, okay, like, they're kind of just playing into the fact, or like, they were talking about, oh, the winds are too bad, but also how Domino is super lucky and she's just gonna land no problem. But then, yeah, when Peter came through, I'm like, all right, they're gonna just, I was hoping he would be like the audience vessel. But I don't know, I think having Peter in there, just having a normal fucking person just pulls, at least for me, I like having that.
No,
I like having my perspective presented.
If I were to have to elaborate on any negative hype involved with this movie, I would just have to say that there was just too much promotion.
I don't know how real this was. Like, I kind of just rolled my eyes at it when I saw it, but there was like a soccer team, and like they replaced their uniforms.
Yeah, I saw that too.
The entire field had like Deadpool faces, and like their uniforms all said Deadpool and his logo. I don't know if they did that strictly for the commercial or if they actually paid to have that team wear that for a game. Like,
yeah. So we're going to wrap things up. Thank you for listening to this issue of the Hype and Cowl Podcast. Don't forget to head over to our Patreon. Help us out. We have some excellent content coming. You don't want to miss out. We have the Hype and Now That's What I Call Music. We're going to review one song off of each volume every day for the rest of our lives. Check it out. So yeah, we're just going to wrap things up right now at this moment. Goodbye.